Hello everyone. So I'm just working on different styles of possible formats for this podcast. So I do little voice notes because sometimes I have a thought, and then sometimes that thought turns out to be probably more quality than not, and sometimes it turns out to be rather funny. But I was thinking of doing slight explanations just in case. Just little clarifications, because just in case. So I wanted to clarify that this talk in particular is not about any countries. This was sort of a comedic way to address obviously nonsense attempts of personal non-consented to constraints, or attempts at constraints. So it's clearly marked just a metaphor/analogy to demonstrate the absurdity. I'm including this because it's probably generally funny to listen to. It addresses nonsense, petty emotions of others, and demonstrates how unnecessary they are. The main point of this illustration is that sometimes letting someone be who they are is exactly what your role or lack thereof is. Because you have your own responsibilities that don't include changing or being over involved in the life of another. Sometimes it's just sort of absurd. Sometimes it's like complete strangers with not the right qualifications that are just, it's just strange. Also, like, generally, unless like super nuanced, trying to over-involve yourself can be very, very awkward. So I see myself as Earth in this situation, but if I were Pluto, it would easily be the best planet, in brackets again, in the solar system. I just am who I am, you know? Unlike some people, I know how to exist in my own entity. I consider using the sun as myself, hashtag self-importance, but that may not be the best use in the current analogy. So yeah, just clarifications that may be needed to happen. Okay, thank you.
So this segment of the podcast is called Earth is its own planet. Thanks.
It's another strange premise. Earth has the right to exist, all right, and thrive. If it bothers you at Pluto that Earth is doing well, or like surviving, or just shooing away the unnecessary constraints that you tried to put on it, that's not relevant. Like, you can be the best Pluto that you can be, but like, it's irrelevant whether you experience jealousy or anything else towards Earth. You need to understand that, like, you're in your own orbit, and you can be the best version of yourself and be the best orbit, but like, your feelings towards Earth, like, don't really matter. Like, Earth has a right to flourish and be its best self, and like help Mars if it wants, you know, and like enjoy the sun's energy. Like, that, I'm sorry, it has nothing to do. Earth doesn't have to chain itself to anything. Sorry.
This part of my podcast is called A Little Bit of a Reno, Appearance for Good.
Okay, this is one of those topics that's nuanced, right? Like, nuanced trigger warning to note a special amount of nuance. But what I wanted to talk about was, so there's a very true thing, appearances can be deceiving. Yes, true, right? And one should not always fall for appearances, right? But that can go in a lot of interesting ways, right? So one thing about like doing a slight reno, at least, right? So you want the quality of the reno to be good. Obviously, that's like when you're critically thinking and you've been through a couple things, right? That's definitely one of your, like, to keep at the back of your mind, okay? but even a bit of a reno can decrease that significant amount of resistance to start something. So sometimes things just maybe sort of look worse than they actually are. Like, and then you look at sort of the product as it's like being revamped or developed or whatever, and it gets progressively less scary to keep working on it, right? And so one of the things of like doing something really simple, like doing an outdoor paint job, for example. It's like it's amazing how much of a like difference it can make on the general state of something. So like it's almost like sometimes when something it looks looks sort of broken down, it's almost like it like so there's been I'm now under the impression there was some sort of weird like as part of I don't know someone's strategy, someone decided to use as a strategy that sort of like ruining of things, which I don't particularly like. It's a destructive like I would say like kind of defeatist model. I really don't really like that kind of way of thinking. But if you think about the fact that there's like natural, for example, things that can happen, and then there's like any added like nonsense on top, right? So it can make something look a lot more like gross and like difficult to work with than it really needs to. So, and like it's actually amazing the psychological impact that can have on whether a person actually, like, you can wake up every day and be like, I have this task I need to do, right? And like let's say it's a productive task, but it's sort of like a chore task, right? And you're like you've been putting it off, and you have every right, like, you know what, you're busy, you have a lot to do, like so you're like putting out, but sometimes it looks even worse, like, because it like I don't know, someone's like, I don't know, let's use like someone's like done something extra to it, and it's just like it looks even, maybe taking like one of the psychological strategies that like is taught is just like taking that first step kind of thing. Well, like one of the things of like making the first step easier, right, I think is like to make it look less bad. Like that obviously should come with a few disclaimers, okay? Because people really, I've learned recently, some people's psychology is really like to misinterpret certain things, but making something look less bad, because when it looks even more bad than it is, right, it can very much act as a deterrent to like do the thing, because when you're looking at it and you're like all you're thinking about is all the negative stuff, and then like that can be on its own sort of like a deterrent, but also it sort of builds on it. So you want to reverse that process. You want to say, you know what, like it's very possible for something like it's very simple, even old, to look new again, like provided you can like do the right fixtures, blah 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 blah. And if you can't, then you can look it up, right? And and like as you're doing it, it's like if you don't do something perfect the first time, you can do it again. But like the entire essence of the element, usually like within reason, right? I know someone somewhere is gonna like, oh, you mean that? No, I don't mean that, sir. I do not mean that. Or ma'am, no, but just those little steps, right? Like at a certain point, things start looking a lot better than they reasonably should be. And also, like, I'm a by default very organized person, and I realize some people are not. And I want to talk about like I think one of the reasons that some people are organized isn't necessarily the fact that they're like lazy per se. I think it's just unless you've unless you've sort of started a structure in a certain way, like it's difficult after to, because you just clean it, right? And then it gets messy almost immediately. You're like, why do I even bother? Well, because your like your framework of your structure wasn't correct, right? So that's why we have like different drawers, and the drawers can be labeled, and like there's a certain amount of effort you have to actually make in order to like initially train yourself into like making sure you put the right thing in the right drawer. But one thing that helps is labels. It might seem really OCD and stupid, but it's actually, and it could be funny labels as long as you remember what and I mean for the drawers, I don't mean for like random people, right? Now I have to clarify after like seeing groups of people navigate certain things, and now you have to clarify. So yeah, I just wanted to talk about how much actually of a positive psychological impact it has when you take that extra bit of effort. So like I'll bring it down to like a very, very base level. So like I have this like, so today what was bothering me, right, just now, right, that I'm like gonna fix. So I like turned a small space sort of into like an office, right? And I have a lot of different files, and so like the thing about moving and offices and like your life is like, especially if you're an organized person with a lot of paperwork, like it gets really like easy to like put a file in a wrong place or so. It's like it gets really, like if you're in the midst of a move, it gets so annoying. It actually gets so annoying, right? And so like I found that recently I'm having to spend a little bit more time on like replacing certain things. And so like, so I realize now that this is probably not an inherent thing that someone would do, right? Because for me, it's just like, it's just a second nature thing. Like, so what I did was I grabbed something that I'm pretty sure I can like turn into something similar to a shelf. And then like it's gonna be way easier to like position items so that I don't have to keep going, like, or like it's minimized the amount of like sort of ruffling around. There's the most adorable article about bears the other day. I was so happy. They're so cute. I really like that. I know they're like intense creatures. Okay, you should understand. Okay, it shouldn't be like, I think someone was joking. They're like the grizzly woman. Okay, like let's not have any unfortunate endings. Like let's have happy. Okay, like not those kinds. Ugh. People, anyways, so let's have like general positive things, but like the bears I love because they're so cute and intense, but like you should be careful. There's a specific way to behave around a bear. Actually, it's one of the articles I wrote pretty early on when I sort of started at the newspaper at my former university. But anyways, there you go.
This part of my podcast is called diplomacy.
Okay, so again, like with logic, right? Okay, diplomatic relations in certain cases, even if they're difficult, okay, can be necessary. Okay, so you can't diplomacy isn't actually a bad word. Like being diplomatic is the ability to sort of like refrain from emotions and try and like work out certain things. Like it's actually a very, like, it's by default necessary. This is a very good, I'm very good at this. So basically, like, so in order to manage things, to try and sort of mitigate the amount of sort of unnecessary hardships that like most face, for example, or at least within a region that you're like responsible for, or whatever, is like being able to like be have a certain level of like maturity for diplomacy, right? And that's not always going to be easy to do because some people do some really questionable things, but like it's part of the reason of like why you have to look into the actual situation of what actually may have happened, because there's going to be sometimes consequences that are unforgivable. It's like absolutely correct. And like, I don't think it's really reasonable, for example, to especially on personal levels, right, to like, if someone's like, definitely like, listen, like, you are probably the one person in the world that I'm not going to talk to, like, but that's like the responsibility of that particular like personal thing, right? It's when you're, say, in a leadership position, or when you're like, you're not the only person that sort of you're not only representative of yourself, right? So by default, you have to be less selfish. And that sometimes means doing really weird. So like the overwhelmingly reasonable reaction for me to what had happened to me would have been like within the range of like pretty next level drama. But instead, I sort of took the opportunity to like research it and sort of like try and educate different channels, and like, because I noticed it was happening to other people as well. So I could have just gotten into the fight of someone like directly, like, and then what good would that have actually done? Like, so the people who were harassing me, some of them didn't actually really know who I was. I think that they intentionally do stuff like this, like, so there's a lot of confusion. And so if I were to actually start like knocking on doors and like slapping people, or like, that would have put me in a really, really bad position very, very quickly. So instead of the opportunity to study and like work within a relatively sort of kind of like, it would have been worse if I started like directly doing what they were doing to me. Like, it would have then made me also not only guilty of a bunch of the horrific things that they were guilty of, but like also it would have been easier for the people who were like obviously trying to set me up with something to set me up, right? So because it shows actually properly unhinged behavior. It's not like a cutesy kind of, I know what you're doing kind of quirky behavior. It's like the part where you really make yourself vulnerable is when you take that super aggressive step, right? Like, because now you might be extra vulnerable. Like, now some people are a lot of people are not. That's why you have to be very careful with like how you navigate a particular situation. That's it.
This part of my podcast is called Practical Intellect.
My intellect is a little bit different than certain styles of intellect, okay? So certain styles of like, it's very much in the intellectual scale, but it's like
I notice things that other people may not.
And I'm overwhelmingly correct about them. That's why I freak people out. You don't have a certain awareness, and you only get that awareness in a lot of cases by having a lot of
really unusual things happen to you, but
it's outside the scope of it. It's also because if at a very early age, like, so when you haven't had a shock to your entire like at a very early age, okay, let me put it to you this way. At a very early age, say, this I think happens sometimes to people who like move to different countries, or like maybe have I don't know what it's like to be a next level kid, right? Like, obviously those people probably, some of those people probably have trauma, but so sometimes they're very robust. But here's what happens, right? When a person is a young child, right, they look to their parents for everything. Their parents can be, if it's a more or less like okay situation, they're the people that they go to, and the parents are supposed to have an answer, and things are a certain way, even if you're like, say, poor or not poor, right? Like, you think that's exactly the way that the world is. That's why children are sometimes naive. So when you have something, when you're still relatively young, and it's when you say you move to a different country, right? You get a very unique level of awareness because suddenly almost everything in a way is different. And it's a really strange experience because it feels surreal, because your world that you understand and know is suddenly so different. And so you're having to observe, and you're just by default placed into observing things that you might have never have had to observe. And that's not the only thing that contributed to how I am, but it's just like you wouldn't know certain things because you like it's probably a good thing that you don't know them. And smarter is like I might not remember the like I like fancy words. I'm not gonna lie. I really like a litany of charges. Really like. I don't know. That's funny. That's someone's being a little fun. I think. But like I remember that word. Good for me. Yeah. So there's things like that, right? So you can speak at a remarkably difficult level. So like the things that are concepts that maybe a lot of people understand, right? You might be able to say with the biggest words humanly imaginable, and you might be able to also understand concepts, or you might have a brain that can process formulas unreasonably fast, that's all intellect. It's different styles of intellect, but the way that I'm smarter is because I've had a very good crash course in the School of Hard Knocks. And then I had an extra layer of hard knock schooling. So that's why, because more really I would say like unusually skewed stuff has probably occurred in my life. It's just a by default thing if a person like kind of has the predisposition to understand stuff. Like it's more of a practical, intellectual sort of, if I had to define it. It's sort of like, okay, so why can you baby an intellectual, right? Like, sure, you want to know what I know here. Like, that's why I started my publication. I was actually surprised at the fact that people don't know some of it. But it's okay. We can do it. Practical. So why is it easy to baby people who are very, very smart? Okay, so here's the thing about reading, for example, high level literature, right? So you're developing a sort of ability for comprehension, right? So like and then okay, so even as I'm doing this, right, like so what I'm trying to explain to you is like why you get caught up in the like essence of intellectualism versus the practicality of intellectualism. Because you go with the you know what it's sort of like, it's a little bit like a guilty pleasure. Like it's a guilty pleasure you have to work up for it to be a guilty pleasure, but it's a guilty pleasure, like you get lost in it. So when you're thinking about some like philosophical concept or idea, like it can be very intriguing just in and of itself. And people who a little bit overdo that, like they sort of lose touch with the essence of like practicality and like tangible things. And if you don't really have to deal with that, then you like it's one of those things where it's like why would you, you know? But I think in terms of like managing some of the stuff that I think has been happening, I think like explaining the why of the practicality is probably a really good thing, actually. And the why is because you don't want to miss the important information for how to do something if you absolutely have to do it, right? That's the foundational principle of the matter. Like, say no one's around, okay? How are you going to actually do it? Like, say it really is, you're the only person who can do the thing, like, how are you going to do it? How are you going to actually do it? And, like this was a meme a while ago. It was sort of like, you know, like someone's like looking for a doctor and everyone's a DJ. All right, so there's like you know so or like everyone's like looking for like a medical doctor, but people have a PhD, so it's like, well, I can discuss the implications of this. So that's one of the most like straight to the point kind of memes of explaining that.
Thank you for listening. Please visit PolicyTrend.com. Bye.